Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring 5 ways to get closer to Yahweh.
Okay.
And we're drawing from this really interesting source, a podcast episode called 5 Ways to Get Closer to Yahweh in the Modern Age.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really cool how they take this ancient wisdom, these age-old traditions and practices, and then they apply them to the challenges of, modern life.
Yeah, it's like they're saying you don't have to choose one or the other,
Yeah.
You can still be connected to your faith and, live in the modern world.
Exactly. And it really got me thinking about my own, relationship with Yahweh and how do I personally connect with him amidst all the, the hustle and bustle of daily life.
Mm.
So one of the first things that this episode really emphasizes is the importance of just dedicating time to Yahweh every single day.
Right.
They talk about prayer, Bible study, and just even quiet reflection.
What I thought was interesting is they don't make it seem like some kind of rigid ritual or anything. It's more like an invitation to just find what works for you.
Yeah.
They even suggest starting small, like maybe just 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, that's actually really encouraging because sometimes, when I think about daily Bible study, it can feel a little overwhelming.
Sure.
Where do I even begin?
Right.
But yeah, just starting with a few minutes, that seems doable.
Yeah, and they had this interesting suggestion about starting with the Psalms.
Okay, what do you think about that?
What?
Because honestly, my first thought was well, wouldn't I be missing out on kind of the bigger picture of the Bible if I just focused on the Psalms?
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But I think the reason they suggest the Psalms is because they're so relatable.
Okay.
They're filled with all these raw human emotions like doubt and joy and fear and gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a really good entry point, especially if you find other parts of the Bible kind of daunting.
I see. So it's more about connecting with the heart of it before diving into maybe the more complex, narratives and stuff.
Exactly. It's about that personal connection with Yahweh's word.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So intentional time with Yahweh check.
Huh.
Now the next step that they outline is studying the scriptures.
Okay.
But not just casually flipping through them.
Mhm.
They talk about studying with a purpose.
I found that part really insightful.
Yeah.
They really frame the Bible as this guide for life, not just some ancient text.
Yeah.
They're saying it holds the answers to challenges that we face even today.
And they actually give this step-by-step method, right?
Yeah.
Choose a topic that resonates with you. Use different tools commentaries and stuff to kind of dig deeper.
Yeah, use the tools that are available.
Yeah, and then apply what you've learned to your own life.
Right. And the example they use is Matthew 6.33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really is.
It makes you think about your priorities.
No.
Am I actually seeking Yahweh's kingdom first in my life, or am I letting other things take precedence?
It's a question we all have to ask ourselves regularly, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got dedicated time with Yahweh. We've got purposeful study of the scriptures.
Mhm.
And then the third step that they highlight is all about community.
Okay.
Specifically, surrounding yourself with other believers.
It's interesting that they bring this up because I think modern life can be so isolating.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we're constantly being bombarded with these messages that, we need to focus on ourselves. We need to achieve individual success.
Yeah.
But they're saying that's not how we were designed.
Right.
We weren't meant to walk this path alone.
We need each other.
Yeah, exactly.
They actually quote Proverbs 27.1 city, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another.
Yes, and they talk about the importance of accountability and encouragement and support.
Yeah.
Being part of a community, whether that's a congregation or a small group or even an online fellowship,
Right.
it can really make a difference.
It can help you stay grounded,
Exactly.
And they also offer some practical advice on how to find and nurture these connections. They
Right.
talk about looking for local fellowships or online groups that align with your faith, sharing your experiences, both the struggles and the victories, with people who understand,
Right.
and finding ways to serve together.
Oh, I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, why do you think they emphasize service so much?
I think it's about putting faith into action.
Okay.
It's about taking the focus off of ourselves
Right.
and directing it outwards towards others.
It's about loving your neighbor.
Exactly. And when you serve alongside others, it strengthens those bonds and you get to experience Yahweh's love in a really tangible way.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about personal connection with Yahweh, studying scripture, finding a supportive community, and the fourth step that they dive into is this idea of prioritizing obedience over convenience.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and this one really resonated with me because I think there's this tension,
Yes.
between wanting to live righteously and then just the constant temptation to take the easy way out.
It's a daily struggle, right?
Yeah, for sure. And they don't shy away from the tough questions either.
Right.
They quote John 14:15, where Yahshua says, "If you love me, keep my commandments."
Wow, yeah.
And it really challenges you to think about, what does obedience really look like in the context of modern life?
That's such a good question.
And they give some very practical examples.
Okay, like what?
Choosing honesty even when a little white lie would be easier, observing the Sabbath even when everyone around you is working,
Right.
guarding your heart from harmful media even when it's like everywhere you turn.
It's about making those conscious choices that align with your faith,
Yeah.
even when it's inconvenient, even when it's difficult.
Yeah. And it's not about just following rules blindly, is it?
No, it's not about that.
It's about trusting that Yahweh's guidance is for your ultimate good.
Exactly. It's about believing that his way is the best way,
Yeah.
even when we don't understand it.
And they even reference Deuteronomy 28, which outlines all those blessings that come from aligning your life with Yahweh's will.
Right. It's about having faith that choosing the right path, even if it's the harder path, will lead to a more fulfilling life.
I love that perspective. It's not about earning rewards. It's about choosing a path that leads to true happiness and peace.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in part one, dedicating time to Yahweh, studying scripture, finding community, and choosing obedience over convenience. But the journey doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
In part two, we'll dive into that fifth and final step outlined in this episode, staying grateful and keeping Yahweh at the center of your life.
I can't wait.
Me too. It's going to be good.
Okay.
All right, so we'll see you next time.
See you then. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to kind of unpack these steps in more detail and, really think about how they can actually be applied to everyday life. And I'm really curious to dig deeper into that last step, the whole idea of staying grateful and keeping Yahweh at the center. But before we do that, I wanted to circle back to something we talked about earlier.
Okay.
The whole idea of making time for Yahweh daily.
Right.
The episode suggested starting with just 15 minutes, which feels doable, but how do you consistently carve out that time when life gets so hectic,
Yeah, that's a struggle for so many people, and the source definitely acknowledges that.
Yeah.
It's just thinking about it less as like finding time
Yeah.
and more about like integrating those practices into your existing routine.
Okay, what do I mean by that?
Well, it's about, those little pockets of time throughout your day.
Right.
Like maybe it's saying a quick prayer while you're commuting or listening to a chapter of the Bible during your lunch break, or even just pausing for a moment of gratitude before meals.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah, it's about those small intentional moments, not necessarily this big formal ritual every day.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about performing for Yahweh.
Right.
It's about nurturing that relationship.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the next step, studying the scriptures with purpose, that one always feels a bit daunting to me.
Yeah.
Like, where do you even begin?
I think the source offers some really helpful advice.
Okay.
Start by identifying a need or a question you have. What are you struggling with? What are you curious about?
Right.
Maybe you're seeking guidance on a particular issue,
Okay.
or you're drawn to a specific book of the Bible.
Yeah.
And then use those study tools that we talked about, like a concordance or a Bible app,
Yeah.
to really explore the text in depth.
I often find myself just reading passively without really absorbing what I'm reading.
I think that's a common experience.
Yeah.
The key is to engage with the text actively.
Okay.
Ask yourself how it applies to your life, what challenges it presents, what wisdom it offers for navigating your own journey.
So it's about finding those nuggets of truth that resonate with your own experience.
Exactly. And that's where the real transformation happens.
Okay, cool. Now, the third step, surrounding yourself with godly community. I think this one can be particularly challenging in today's world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, we're so connected digitally, but often feel so disconnected in real life.
Right.
So how do you actually find and build those authentic connections?
Well, the source emphasizes that it's not just about finding a community.
Okay.
It's about actively participating.
Okay.
Maybe it's joining a small group at your local congregation, volunteering for a cause you believe in, or even connecting with like-minded individuals online.
Right.
The key is to step outside your comfort zone and engage.
I think a lot of people might hesitate to do that because they feel like they don't have it all together.
Oh,
They might feel inadequate or unworthy.
that's a misconception that we need to challenge.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect or having all the answers.
Right.
It's about sharing your journey, supporting others, and learning from one another.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we're stronger together. So it's about creating a space where you can be vulnerable and authentic without judgment.
Yes, and that sense of belonging, of shared purpose,
Yeah.
can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, now the fourth step, prioritizing obedience over convenience.
Okay.
This one can feel really tough in a world that constantly tells us to, look out for ourselves, to take the easy path.
Right. Instant gratification.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we actually stay true to our faith when it's not always convenient or popular?
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
It's about making those conscious choices,
Mm-hmm.
even when they're difficult.
Right.
The source uses those concrete examples that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Choosing honesty,
Mm-hmm.
observing the Sabbath, being mindful of the media you consume.
Right.
It's about aligning your actions with your faith,
Yeah.
even when it's inconvenient.
Even when it means going against the grain. I think a lot of people might struggle with the idea of obedience,
Yeah?
It can feel restrictive or legalistic.
Right. I think what the source is emphasizing, though, is that obedience isn't about blind rule following.
Right.
It's about trusting that Yahweh's guidance is for your ultimate good.
Mm-hmm.
It's about choosing the path of righteousness, even when it's the harder path, because you believe it will lead to a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, so it's about aligning your will with Yahweh's will.
Yes.
Not just blindly following a set of rules.
Exactly. And that requires a deep level of trust and surrender.
Yeah, it makes me think of that quote, "Thy will be done." It's about letting go of our own ego and desires and submitting to something greater than ourselves.
That's beautifully said. And that surrender, that alignment, is where true freedom lies.
Okay, so we've explored the first 4 steps in detail, but the one I'm really intrigued by is the last one, staying grateful and keeping Yahweh at the center.
Okay.
So in a world that's so focused on what we lack, how do we cultivate and maintain that sense of gratitude?
This is where the power of perspective comes in.
Okay.
The source suggests some practical tools like keeping a gratitude journal, where you write down things you're thankful for each day.
Okay.
They also talk about incorporating gratitude into your prayers,
Right.
thanking Yahweh for the blessings in your life, both big and small.
Yeah, but what about when you're going through a really difficult time?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still possible to be grateful then?
That's when it's most challenging,
Yeah.
but also potentially the most transformative.
Okay.
The source emphasizes that gratitude isn't about ignoring the hard stuff.
Right.
It's about choosing to focus on the good, even amidst the challenges.
So it's not about pretending that everything is okay.
Oh.
It's about acknowledging the good even when things are tough.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that even in those difficult seasons, there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the support of loved ones, the beauty of nature, or simply the gift of another day.
It sounds like gratitude is a choice,
It is.
a conscious decision to shift your focus.
It's a powerful practice that can change your whole perspective. When you approach life with an attitude of gratitude, it shifts your focus away from what you lack and toward what you have.
It's about recognizing the abundance that already exists in our lives,
Yes.
rather than constantly striving for more.
And that shift in perspective can lead to a deeper sense of contentment and peace.
So gratitude is key to keeping Yahweh at the center of our lives.
It is when we're focused on the good, on the blessings, it naturally draws us closer to the source of those blessings. It helps us see Yahweh's hand at work in our lives, even in the midst of the ordinary and the mundane.
It's about recognizing that He's present in every moment, not just in the big dramatic events.
Exactly. And that awareness, that connection, is what brings true joy and fulfillment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Exploring these 5 powerful steps towards a closer relationship with Yahweh. But it's more than just steps, isn't it?
It is.
It's a way of life.
It's about weaving these practices into the fabric of our everyday lives, making them a natural part of who we are, not just something we do on Sundays or during designated quiet times.
It's about living out our faith in a way that's authentic and meaningful.
Exactly. And I think this podcast episode has provided some incredibly valuable tools and insights for navigating that journey.
Yes.
With intention and grace.
Absolutely. But the journey doesn't end here.
No, it doesn't.
In part 3, we'll delve even deeper into the practical implications of these 5 steps and explore how you can apply them to your own life.
I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the last two parts, really digging into these 5 steps toward a closer relationship with Yahweh.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
It has, and I'm really excited to get even more practical now. Like, how can we actually take these principles and weave them into our everyday lives?
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about these concepts, but putting them into practice is where the real transformation happens.
I completely agree. So let's start with that first step, making time for Yahweh daily. We talked about how it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming commitment.
Right.
Even just 15 minutes can make a difference.
Yeah, and remember, it's not about finding time. It's about creating it.
Yeah.
Being intentional with those little pockets of time throughout your day.
What really resonated with me was the idea of incorporating prayer into everyday activities. Like, instead of just rushing through my morning commute, I could use that time to talk to Yahweh.
Exactly. Or how about pausing for a moment of gratitude before meals? It's about recognizing Yahweh's presence in those ordinary moments of our lives.
I love those suggestions. Okay, so now let's talk about studying the scriptures with purpose. This one can feel a bit overwhelming.
Sure.
Do you have any tips for getting started?
Absolutely. Remember, it's not about reading the entire Bible in a week. It's about engaging with the text in a way that's meaningful to you.
Okay.
One approach is to choose a book or a passage that speaks to a specific need or question you have.
So, for example, if I'm struggling with anxiety, I might focus on passages about peace and trust.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available to help you dig deeper. Bible dictionaries, commentaries, even online study tools can provide valuable insights.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, get stuck in the habit of passive reading. We just kind of skim the words without really absorbing them.
That's so common. And that's why it's important to engage with the text actively.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, you can underline verses that stand out to you, jot down your thoughts and questions in the margins, or even keep a separate journal for your reflections.
So it's about making it personal, making it your own.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about creating a dialogue with the text, wrestling with the ideas, and allowing them to challenge and transform you.
Now, the third step, surrounding yourself with godly community. I think this is one that a lot of people struggle with, especially in today's world.
Yeah, you're right. It can be difficult to find those authentic, supportive connections,
Right.
but it's so crucial. We weren't meant to walk this path alone. We need each other.
Yeah. I know for me personally, I sometimes hesitate to reach out because I'm afraid of being judged. I feel like I need to have it all together before I can be part of a community.
And that's a lie that we often tell ourselves. The truth is, none of us have it all together. We're all on a journey, and we all need grace and support along the way. A true community is a place where you can be vulnerable, where you can share your struggles and your victories without fear of judgment.
So how do we find those communities? Where do we even begin?
Start by looking within your own sphere of influence. Is there a small group at your local congregation that you could join? A Bible study you could participate in?
What if you don't belong to a congregation?
There's still so many options. Look for online communities, volunteer opportunities, or even just reach out to people you know who share your faith.
Yeah.
Sometimes the simplest act of invitation can be the start of a beautiful connection.
Yeah, it's about taking that first step, even if it feels scary.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about finding the perfect community. It's about being willing to show up, to be present, and to offer your authentic self.
Now, the fourth step, prioritizing obedience over convenience, this one can be a real challenge. Our culture is so focused on instant gratification and self-indulgence.
Yeah.
It can be hard to choose the path of obedience when it's not the easy path.
I think a lot of people misunderstand what obedience really means. It's not about blindly following a set of rules.
Okay.
It's about surrendering to Yahweh's will, trusting that His ways are higher than our ways, even when we don't understand them.
So it's about aligning our desires with His desires.
Exactly. And that's not always easy. It requires humility, surrender, and a willingness to let go of our own ego and our own perceived control.
The episode gives some really practical examples of what this might look like in everyday life. Choosing honesty even when a little white lie would be easier. Observing the Sabbath even when the pressure is on to work. Guarding our hearts and minds from harmful media.
These are all choices that require intentionality, discipline, and a deep trust in Yahweh's goodness.
They're not always easy choices, but they're the choices that lead to true freedom and lasting joy.
I agree with that.
And that brings us to our final step, staying grateful and keeping Yahweh at the center.
Okay.
And this one, I think, ties everything together.
Yeah. Gratitude is so powerful.
It is. It has such a powerful effect on our hearts and minds. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have.
And when we focus on the good, on the blessings, It naturally draws us closer to Yahweh.
I know for me, when I intentionally practice gratitude, it changes my whole outlook. It helps me see the world through a lens of abundance rather than scarcity.
It's like putting on a pair of gratitude glasses.
Yeah.
Suddenly you start noticing all the good things you might have overlooked before.
And the more you practice gratitude, the more you realize how much you have to be thankful for. It's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And it's not about ignoring the challenges or pretending everything's perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even in the midst of difficulty.
It's about remembering that Yahweh is present in every moment, even when we don't feel it.
And that awareness, that connection, is what brings true peace and contentment, is what keeps Yahweh at the center of our lives.
You know, we've explored a lot of deep concepts in this deep dive.
We have.
But ultimately, it all comes down to this cultivating a heart of gratitude and surrendering to Yahweh's will.
And when we do that, when we choose to live in that space of gratitude and surrender, everything else falls into place.
We experience true freedom, joy, and purpose.
Exactly. It's a journey worth taking.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration has inspired you to deepen your own connection with Yahweh and to experience the richness and fullness of a life lived in faith. Shalom.